evening, President Riley and trustees of the board. I'm excited to be here tonight to share all about Elevated and the work we've been doing so far this school year. As you can see, we started the year with 13 teachers and 191 students. We gained another teacher in mid-October to assist with our growing enrollment. By November, our enrollment grew to 255. At every transition time, we seem to gain more students than we lose. With the transition back to hybrid for the other 4 elementary schools and STMS, we've again gained students. As of yesterday, we have 261 students and 5 more starting on February 22nd. With starting a new school, I'm not sure we could have anticipated all the minutiae involved in that work. The elementary team took the initiative to build out their schedules, which gave me additional time to work on the virtual middle school schedule. We were able to offer a variety of electives, incentives, and the required courses, including English language arts, grade level math, accelerated math, science, and social studies. We are constantly reflecting on how we are serving students and if we can improve that. We ended the first trimester by attending a project-based learning training online and ready to get started with PBL for the second trimester. Jill DeSoucy, our 3rd grade teacher, led a standards-based grading training for our staff so we could also focus on standards-based grading for the remainder of the year. Several of our middle school staff were familiar with SBG, having done it for a few years prior to moving to Elevated. So it was a good review for them, an introduction to our staff that was new to the standards-based grading. Currently, we are focusing on creating outdoor experiences for our middle school students. Sabrina Zales, our science teacher, is working with a parent and myself to get these groups organized and up and running. Doing these outdoor experiences is what we envision to implement regularly in the future. We're starting with the middle school, specifically 7th grade, as a parent group is heavy in that grade level, and it's a large group of students. We're planning on growing this part of Elevated as we want our focus to be experiential project-based learning. We feel that we have such a great opportunity living in this amazing community to build a school around this concept. In the fall, Allie Navarro, the 5th grade teacher, organized a socially distanced beach cleanup day at Pope Beach. Allison Regal, our TKK teacher, organized both Christmas and Valentine's decorations for the district and had great participation from Elevated students. Jill DeSoucy has several students participating in Shane McConkey's Eco Challenge, in which they're turning trash into art. This group of students did a trash cleanup at Sawmill Pond last week. In January, we sent out a survey to all our families. The main goal was to find out how people were feeling about Elevated on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being very satisfied. As you can see, 76% of our families rated their experience as a 4 or 5, with less than 4% rating their experience a 1 or 2. We also wanted to ask families what they were thinking about enrollment for next year. At this point, about 1/3 of our families are committed to Elevated, and about half our families are undecided for the upcoming school year. With 1/3 of our 8th grade families wanting to continue with Elevated into 9th grade, this has us starting our planning for the 9th grade year of Elevated. Next, we'll look at some of the amazing student work. I've linked quite a bit of student work. I'm only going to go through some of it. Most of it is also on our school website and or social media accounts. So we'll start with TKK and then 3rd and 5th. I'm going to get out of this full screen, so give me a second. So this is our TKK writing activity she did with Martin Luther King. As you can see, much of the work our students do is similar to a brick and mortar school. A common misconception about Elevated is that students spend hours a day online. This isn't the case. Students have work that is paper pencil as well, especially at the lower grades. Next is a science lesson. Let's see if that's going to go forward. Yeah, that our 1st grade teacher did with her 1st graders. And this is a mystery science lesson. She took them through this whole process, starting with the inquiry, how could a tree travel halfway around the world? And this hypothesis from Evelyn, I wanted to share with you. I can get up to it.
Hi, my name is Evelyn, and my hypothesis is that the seeds fly away with the wind and the water. They get removed from the trees, and then they could grow in new spots. That's how they fly away and go somewhere else, so they could get new spots to grow in. Bye.
So the next thing they did, their first step was experimenting with seeds to see if they need light to grow. So you can see there are 2 sample plants, and then on the right, the students drew what they saw. Then they made models of different seed pods. Then they experimented with those seed pods to see which dispersed the furthest and which were more likely to land in the sun. Then they wrote their conclusions. And their final step was the students collected seeds from their neighborhood and sorted them according to how they disperse. One of her students is in Hawaii currently, and they collected some very interesting seeds from where they are currently living. Next, we have a second grade, what they're working on for their project-based learning. They're studying the environmental impacts of climate change in the Arctic, geography, and animals that live there. They also did a science experiment to understand the adaptations of animals' blubber. And this unit will culminate with each student writing a report about an Arctic animal. Next, I'll go on to third grade. This is a unit that the third graders are doing, creating a food truck menu. This unit uses a variety of math skills to support their learning and is a great way for the teacher to see if they've met the standard in a non-traditional way. And this is one of her students' shopping lists. And you can see that not only have they figured out the cost per item that they're buying, which I think is a calculation within the spreadsheet, but then they have to round it and try to figure out which is the best price and how much they will charge for different things. This is a fourth grade lesson about creating a political platform. Amy Rice, the fourth grade teacher, had the guest speaker, Christy Cregan, a city council member, speak to the class about creating a platform to run for office. The students then wrote their own platforms, created their own parties, and made posters. Next, we have the fifth grade. These fifth graders created one-pagers about a book they read about civil rights. Many teachers are using one-pagers to assess conceptual learning. You can see we have a couple different examples of those. And next, I'll go on to the sixth grade. On the left-hand side, you can see some writing samples, the Best of Me writing, in which they used a black and white photo and wrote about their favorite part of themselves. There are also some examples of the work the sixth grade students are doing in science, including an engineering and design challenge where the students build a COVID candy dispenser. I have that open up here. So this kind of takes you through all the work that they had to do, including the instructions from the teacher. And a lot of it is asynchronous, meaning they do it independently. So there's a video, they answer questions, they define a problem, they fill out this portion after the right-hand side after watching the video. They answer questions about the engineering problem, how to pass out candy while maintaining a social distancing. Then they brainstorm some ideas. They add sketches or do it in Tinkercad, which is a 3D design program. And she even included a tutorial on how to use Tinkercad. Then you can see here that the student included their picture of their project, then their writing for this assignment. And as well as they actually included a full-scale model of the project they did once they completed it. So next I'll go on to middle school. see if I can get that one to go. So the 8th grade stamped project. This project is cross-curricular with the language arts teacher, Lauren Malone, and she's partnering with our social studies teacher, Jillian Raymond, to create this project. The 8th graders read the book Stamped, which discusses the history of racism in America and the many stories that shaped modern lives. Now they're moving forward with the driving question, how do stories from the past define who we are? The students are creating a heritage journal. That's what's linked here. They would then turn these heritage journals into children's books, who they hope to read to the younger elevated students. They will have a guest speaker, which is a children's book author and a publisher in the future as part of their project-based learning project. The next are just some cool examples of the work students have completed in photography and digital media arts with Tom Perazzo. A couple of these are about their hands programs, or excuse me, projects. These are different digital media arts that they did. And again, I didn't show you all of the examples of student work, but if you're interested in viewing it, please feel free to check out the Elevated website and the social media accounts. So our next steps is really about growing enrollment and telling our story, but more importantly, it's about making sure we're taking care of the students we have. And we're very excited to continue this adventure of growing our school as the 9th school in Lake Tahoe Unified School District. Any questions?
Questions from the board?
I have a question.
Go ahead. Bonnie, I know you do. Go.
So, Ms. Martin, 50% of your families are not sure what they're going to do next year. Have you had conversations with them to really understand what's going into that decision for them?
A majority of them, based on the survey, is because of the situation with COVID. They're just unsure.
I have a question, President Riley. Dr. Martin, I wanted to ask you about I really like the project-based learning and the experiential examples you shared. And, and I really appreciate that so many of them are happening individually, that kids are doing this at home. The examples about going to Poke Beach or to Sawmill Pond, I'm just wondering, how do the kids get to those sites? And are you facilitating rides for those kids that may not have access to being able to arrive at another site?
At this point, we haven't been facilitating rides just because having people you don't know that are outside your home in your car is kind of a higher risk situation. So they're all voluntary, they're not required. And even the elevated outdoors that we're planning on doing starting in April, those will be voluntary, and if families can't get there, there's no consequence for students who can't make it at this point.
Is there a way, I feel bad, I want that to happen, obviously. I want kids to have access, and so that's why I guess maybe there's a way, I don't know if you've thought about that, or when you do those voluntary activities, if there's a way to provide a similar, maybe not exactly equal, but a similar experience for kids at home that they could do, with their siblings or their neighborhood,
Right.
cleanup or the collecting the seed pods, that sort of thing.
And part of what we are doing with the elevated outdoors is trying to create the same learning experience in different areas of town, so that when we looked at the map of where all of our students live, we have a heavy population that lives kind of out in the Myers area. So potentially doing one activity out in Myers and doing a similar activity more in the middle of town, so that we can access kids if they can't get a ride, maybe they could ride a bike or walk. So trying to make it accessible for more students in that way.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's really important that we be creative that way, and that may be some of the partnerships that Nicole Bergner talked about in terms of peer mentors, or even you mentioned parents, and I know some of the parents out, and I live out in the North Upper Truckee area. I know there's been a lot of parents willing to volunteer to take kids out on field trips, and I know they're aware that they'd like to promote that in other neighborhoods. And I guess I know it's a challenge, and I just want us to do a better job of communicating to families. And maybe just reaching out to some of those families and parents and seeing if there's some folks that could help out, or even maybe as part of the Lake Tahoe Ed Foundation, maybe Valerie can check in with some parents or some volunteers. But I know it's tricky, but
I know,
would
and
like
I think I would say that we have a lot of parent volunteers and who are willing. It is just this point. It's COVID that's sort of the scary part. If it were a normal year, I don't think it would be an issue. I was on with about 10 parents yesterday, and they're all willing or have been fingerprinted in the past and support the groups once they're at the location. So we're moving on the right track. And I think removing COVID, hopefully will remove some of those barriers. And then when the schools reopen, if we potentially need to get busing involved, then that's something that we would consider doing.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Another thought or comment?
Principal Martin, I just want to thank you for all your effort with putting Elevated together. I know you put a lot of work into this in a short amount of time. And I'm really proud of our district coming together and creating this school for families to benefit our students. And even in El Dorado County, other districts are watching. And I'm really, really proud of the district and yourself for coming together and making this happen.
Thank you.
Cheers.
I do have one more question.
Bonnie, go ahead. And then I'm
So
gonna make a comment.
are there formal, like, problem-based learning kinds of curriculum that we're interested in using for this? Or right now we're making it all up? Or what do you see happening in the future?
They're making it all up and trying to have a heavier focus on the experiential learning based in Lake Tahoe. That will be a heavier focus with the science. So you saw the second grade project, which is amazing about the Arctic, but we want to try to be a little more hyper-focused on the environment of where we currently live. So they are building these things. They can borrow from people who've built for other areas, but they are building it to make it perfect for what we're trying to do. I will say I am very lucky, and I've told Dr. Cutler this multiple times. The staff that I have at Elevated is amazing. They go above and beyond for everything. I am truly blessed to have such an amazing teaching staff. It makes my job really easy, and I absolutely love being a part of their team.
Great.
Okay, I'm just gonna make a comment, Kelly. I don't think I think when we look at this, we've been doing this for almost a year. I don't think there's no going back from remote and hybrid learning. I mean, we have to be good at this. And this is a great start. I think remote instruction is set to remain a significant part of the K-12 education long after COVID-19 leaves us. And we sometimes talk about teacher shortages, so forth and so on. This is going to be part of, I think, the new education, and I want to get really good at it. And I think that we should dedicate ourselves as a district. I think Brandy said it best. Other people are looking at us. Okay, great. Let's really get after this and have people come to us and say, how did you do this? Okay. And so I'll leave that as a compliment to you. In a year, I think you've done an amazing job, and I thank you.